We don't know. We're not privy to the reasons, but everything that occurs happens for a reason. Every interaction, every single... Well, faith and trust allow us to perceive it correctly. Okay, so again, for this commandment, so Moshe Rabbeinu, in his... Moshe Rabbeinu is preparing the Jewish people to enter the land of Israel. And as a loving father and as a loving teacher who's been with us from the inception of Judaism, as we went out of Egypt, took us out of Egypt, and is now about to pass us to Yehoshua, is reminding us as to the very nature of what Judaism is. See, we have many verses in the Torah that are imperatives, that are asking us to do, or telling us to do, and instructing us what to do and how to do. But this is one of the only verses that really qualifies the very nature of our relationship with Judaism itself. So let's look at it. For this mitzvah, and again, this is Shishi of Nitzavim. You want to read it? Again?
This one.
Right at the top. For this commandment.
For this commandment that I command you today, it is not hidden from you, and it is not distant. It is not in heaven for you to say, who can ascend to heaven for us and take it for us so that we can listen to it and perform it? Nor is it across the sea for you to say, who can cross to the other side of the sea for us and take it for us so that we can listen to it and perform it. Rather, the matter is very near to you, in your mouth and in your heart to perform it.
Okay, so Moshe Rabbeinu is explaining to us as the very nature of our relationship with Hashem. Now, there are those who interpret this verse regarding the mitzvah that was spoken to about right before this verse, which is the mitzvah of tshuva. The tshuva, the returning, recalibrating, and refining ourselves is not distant. It's not beyond us. It is for every single person within us to be able to do this. But the Abarbanel and other commentators explain that this, when it says for this mitzvah, which mitzvah are we talking about? Because it says, for this commandment, this mitzvah. Which mitzvah are we speaking about? So again, there are those commentators who explain this mitzvah refers to the mitzvah of tshuva. It's not in the heaven. You don't have to climb out of this world in order to affect tshuva. You don't have to travel to a foreign land across the sea, but rather it is exceedingly close to you. It's within you to make tshuva. But then there, Barbanel says this mitzvah is actually referring to the Torah in its entirety, all of Judaism. All of Judaism is close to us, not just close, but when it says ki mitzvah azoris, it says lo b'shamayim, he is not in the heavens. You don't have to climb out of this world, because after 40 years of listening to Moshe and learning the Torah, it would seem that in order to be Jewish, you would have to leave this world. That it is very, very distant from us to be able to live on a day-to-day basis as a Jew. And when Moshe Rabbeinu tells us, it says, Lo b'shamayim, it's not in the heaven, it's not across the sea. Rather, the matter is exceedingly close to you, in your mouth and in your heart to do it. So this is one of the few verses in Chumash that really qualifies the very essence of our relationship with Hashem. And that is, it is close. Not just close, being Jewish and feeling a connection to Hashem is not just close, but is exceedingly close. Now let's understand. The Rebbe says as follows. According to the simple interpretation of the verses, it means that there is a thought that a person might thought that this mitzvah, Torah mitzvot, it is wondrous for us. It is beyond us. It is beyond our human consideration. It is distant, and therefore we would think that the entire novelty of this verse is it is exceedingly close to us. And not only that, but the main novelty of the pasuk is bilivavcha, to your heart, in your heart. Now, the Alter Rebbe, you might have known, you might have looked in the Tanya, the entire Tanya, and therefore the entire Chassidus Chabad is based on this verse. This one verse. If you open up to the Daf Hashara, the opening, the what's this called? How does
Index.
this part right here?
Index. That's the opening page.
The opening page. If you look at the opening page, you would see that the Alter Rebbe says to understand full well how this verse, how is it in fact true? Comes a question. Do I feel that this is exceedingly close to me? Do I always feel that Judaism, loving of Hashem, my personal Judaism, my desire to keep the commandments, is it not just close, exceedingly close? Do I always feel this?
Well, of course, you have to. When you say a prayer, when you eat something, when you wake up, there's always something to remind you.
Yeah, there's something that we have to do. But here we're talking about how I feel about it.
Great about it.
Now the question is, how do I really feel? So the verse is telling us it's not just close. Judaism is not just close. Loving God is not just close. It is exceedingly close. And the Alter Rebbe says we have to understand this question. All of Tanya, to a certain extent, was based on this verse. Because before the Tanya came along, before the Alter Rebbe posed this question, there's really two ways of really looking at it. You could either look at it from a mechanical perspective. It says, okay, it's close. I don't really feel it. Okay, but you know what? I don't understand all the Torah, and it's fine. I just keep on doing my thing every single day. I have a checklist Judaism. I wake up in the morning. I say Modeh, I wash my hands. I go to shul and I daven and I wash before eating, etc., etc. I check. By the time I go to sleep, I performed all the mitzvahs, all the chores that were necessary. So I might not feel exceedingly close, but okay, so what? Then there's another way of looking at it. It says, wait, the Torah says that the very nature of my connection to Hashem is that I feel and I am exceedingly close to Hashem. But I don't feel that. And the Torah is not qualifying my relationship when the Beit HaMikdash was here. It's not speaking about in past tense, and nor is it speaking about in future tense when Mashiach will be here. Rather, it's speaking in present tense. Ki karov alecha hadavar ma'od, for the matter is exceedingly close to you right now. So if the Torah is making such a qualifying statement about me, and I don't feel it, then perhaps this is not true. And if this is not true, what else is not true? This is a dilemma. When we're saying close, we're saying exceedingly close.
Well, why is that exceedingly close? Put in there. What
so let's understand this.
What is exceedingly? Why
so
is it the adverb?
Let's understand. The Alter Rebbe explains later on in chapter 17 of Tanya that to say that it is exceedingly close into our heart, seemingly the Chorah, really goes against our senses, our human senses. Why? That is not so. It is not so close to us to be able to transform our heart from desiring this world, from desiring this particular world, to desiring God.
So he doesn't want that.
No, but it doesn't seem that it's so immediate for us.
But it is.
It's natural that way. It doesn't seem that way. Our hearts, usually, at least from the worldly perspective, desire our physical welfare, material goodness. So to say that it's exceedingly close, what I really, really crave, what I really want, what I really desire, my essence, my connection to Hashem is only God. Exceedingly so. Alter Rebbe says, how do we understand this? Not only that, the Gemara in Masechet Brachos, in Tractate Brachos, says, prior, Moshe Rabbeinu says, and now what does Hashem want from you? Only to fear Him. So to fear Him in itself, is that a minor thing? To fear God is a minor thing? How much more so to love God? If to fear God, to have genuine fear of Hashem, you know what fear of Hashem means? What is fear of Hashem? Some people actually mistake the fear of Hashem, Yirat Hashem, of Yirat Oynish, fear of punishment.
I think that it's fear of understanding if you try to wrap your head around the whole, everything that it encompasses, it would probably kill you, right?
So what does the fear of Hashem mean?
It's just too overwhelming to understand.
No, but what does it mean? Because it says, what does Hashem want from you? He wants you to fear Him. As the Gemara says, "Hakol b'yedei Shemayim chutz miyirat Shemayim." Everything is in the hands of a God except for your personal fear of God. What does that mean to fear God? You ever thought of this?
No.
What does it mean to love God, to fear God? What does it mean?
I can only imagine that one would be to keep you in line, and one aspect of it would be to keep you in line because you fear the outcome of being evil, and one would be one aspect of fear would have to be not being able to comprehend.
So let's understand, what is love and what is fear? Just parenthetically, it's very important. Sometimes you ask a very basic question. And you ask most people, what do you mean when you say I love you or fear of Hashem? What exactly does that mean?
Well, the love part's easy, the fear.
So
I got that. Okay.
Done.
Love is just, unconditionally giving yourself for someone else, giving everything of your body or essence to someone.
That's the way you give love. That doesn't necessarily mean love in itself.
Your intention is to make sure that your happiness is not first, theirs is.
So the Rebbe explains elsewhere, and it's explained in Chassidus, it's explained in Tanya, it explains that love it's actually a verb. It's actually a movement of becoming closer to the one you love. It's recognizing that you're two with the desire to become one, right? Which requires vulnerability, which requires losing all the fronts, and moving forward and eventually becoming one with the one you love. To give of yourself, eventually to give yourself over completely. Right? When you say, I love you to Hashem, which means that I want to come closer, I want to become vulnerable, I want to become one, that my entire reality should resonate and should reveal and express our relationship. What is fear of Hashem? So a lot of people mistake to think that fear of Hashem is a fear that if I make a mistake or if I do something wrong, I'm going to be punished. That's not fear of Hashem, that's fear of punishment. And fear of punishment is a lowly type of fear.
Fear has to be the opposite of love, it has to be separation.
It is. But fear of punishment, it's good as a crutch. For example, if a child listens to his parents because he's afraid that he's going to get in trouble. So he's not really listening to his parents as much as he's protecting himself. He is doing this for himself. Somebody who's afraid of being punished is not really serving Hashem as much as he's really serving his own interests. So what is fear of Hashem? Fear of Hashem is I don't want to, God forbid, disconnect myself from God. I don't want to do anything that will interrupt our relationship. I don't want to, God forbid, separate myself even for a second. Not on a thought level, not on a speech level, not on an action level. I don't care if there's a punishment involved or not. That's not my issue.
It's separation.
It's the separation. It's the separation. Mendel Futerfas once mentioned this several weeks ago. Mendel Futerfas once sat in 770 amongst a few Bachrim. And the Bachrim were learning about the concept that during Elul you're supposed to make what's called cheshbon nefesh, a personal reckoning, an account. And he says, tell me, what do you know about cheshbon nefesh? What kind of an account are you supposed to be making right now in Elul? They looked at him, they knew better than to answer. Because they wanted to hear what he's going to say. So he said, look, let's think about this. Cheshbon nefesh, a personal account, a personal reckoning of our standing, of where we are in life, etc., etc. Generally, people make this kind of cheshbon nefesh during Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is the day that you know that you make cheshbon nefesh. So he said like this. Let's look. Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the year. And we dress in white in order to resemble holy entities, the angels. We abstain from human activities, 5 human activities, in order to become holier, removed from humanity for the day. And we stay in a shul the entire day. So it's our holiest day. We're in the holiest setting, acting and assuming a holier identity. And what do we do for 25 hours?
Right.
September I sinned like this, and October I messed up like this, and the cheshbon nefesh. I've messed up like this, and I let out a word I shouldn't, and I listened to something, and I looked at it, and I did. So he said, no, that's cheshbon nefesh, he told the Bachrim. He said, yeah, that's cheshbon nefesh. To take a tally of what I did this year. He says, that's not cheshbon nefesh. This is what you do on a holy day? You bring out and you dredge up all your sins? You're tainted the day. So what is the cheshbon nefesh? What kind of reckoning should we be making? The reckoning is not so much what did I do, but who did I do it to? How could I have hurt God? How could I have done this to us? See, when you're so connected to someone, every single deed matters. Somebody else you could tolerate from. Okay, they have problems, they have this and this and this. But you, I expected more from you. We're together. We have a relationship. We have a trust. I'm vulnerable to you. This, if that's the case, then whatever you do hurts even more and is magnified more. And the fact that a person could go off and do what they did is because the relationship in itself has become obscured. The very nature of the relationship that we have with Hashem became obscured. And that's the cheshbon nefesh. How could I allow my relationship to become obscured to this level? How could I dig myself so into this world and assume the worldly perspective and a worldly mindset to the extent that it became prioritized over my relationship with God? And I want to reclaim that. I want to reclaim my relationship. So there's love, which means coming closer to someone, and fear that chaz v'shalom, you don't want to move away from the person. You don't want to disconnect from the person. And it's not that you're afraid that you're going to get punished. You know, I had a boss in one of my first jobs right out of rabbinical school. I was a kosher supervisor. This guy, he was working in the supermarket. He was one of the higher ups. And every woman who passed by him, you had to make a comment. Look at that one, look at this one, look at that one. And he's married. So I said to him, do you ever do anything about this? Do you ever? He says, no, God forbid are you. I said, why? What's preventing you? He says, one word. What's the word? He says, half. Half. I said, what do you mean half? He says, half. If I get caught, if she catches me, she'll take me for half of what I have. And what I have, half of what I have is half of what my father has. And he'll kill me. In other words, it's not that I'm afraid to hurt the relationship. It's not that I'm afraid to, God forbid, disgrace what we have. It's I'm afraid that what's going to be the result of that which is going to affect me. I'm not even afraid of hurting you, per se. That's not fear of Hashem. That's fear of punishment. So if a father tells his son, clean your room up, please. And the son says, I don't want to. And the father says, okay, if you don't clean up your room, you're going to have a consequence. You're going to have a consequence. But if you do clean your room and it remains clean, I'll give you that bike that you wanted. And all of a sudden, the son has a complete transformation, a complete turnaround of attitude, and he goes and cleans up his room. And the room remains clean. Who did the Son clean it for?
Himself.
He didn't do it to serve his Father. He did it out of protection for himself and in order to further his own self-interest. This means to be involved with Hashem. Now comes a question. The pasuk in Chumash says, not only this kind of mentality, this kind of mindset, this kind of perception is close to us, but is exceedingly close. It's one with me. So the question is, do I really feel that all the time? And again, the Torah is not talking about past tense, it's not speaking about in future tense, but rather right now, the way I am right now. The Rebbe goes on to say, and this is the novelty of when it says, Ubilivavcha, that and is exceeding, and is for this matter is close to you in your heart and your mouth to do it, that it is close. And the Alter Rebbe explains in the Tanya, how do we understand that it's very close? Means that every single person could come, every one of us could come to love God. How? Because we don't have to create a new emotion. Every one of us has an innate love for Hashem that we inherited from our forefathers Avraham and Yitzchak and Yaakov. To create a genuine emotion is quite difficult. But as we spoke about many times, in inheritance, to what we acquire from our parents on the emotional level, and what they acquired and they weren't acquired, we've in every one of us inherited a genuine love for Hashem, which is innate within us. And it's concealed within each one of our hearts. And therefore, we don't really have to innovate, or we don't have to create or innovate a love for God. Rather, all we really have to do is reveal it from being obscured into the forefront of our consciousness. So in fact, every single one of us has a love for Hashem. Every one of us. Now,
only Jews?
So if we received it from Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and to the extent the Alter Rebbe says later on later on the Alter Rebbe says even a person who doesn't keep any Torah or mitzvot, and he seems to be as far as possible from Torah and mitzvot, but if somebody puts a gun to his head and says either you relinquish your Judaism, you convert, you idol worship, or we kill you, this innate love will come out from obscurement into the forefront of his consciousness and will prevent him from doing so. Comes the question though, parenthetically, but you see so many people. Says, yeah, but we spoke about this before in the Gemara, in Soita says, a person would never sin unless a temporary spirit of frivolity, a ruach shtus, a spirit of frivolity, what's called temporary insanity. He stops thinking clearly. The Yetzar Kahara comes and starts saying, don't worry, you could do this, you won't get caught, no, nobody will be the wiser, it'll be fine, and you'll just come back, and so on and so forth. And then one thing leads to the other, leads to the other, leads to the other, and the person unfortunately becomes removed from where he was supposed to be. I had a student, very, very precious guy, very precious guy. I loved him dearly. But he was in his 80s, and I once asked him, tell me, Mr. Cohen, how is it that for Rosh Hashanah you buy a non-kosher brisket? Someone was buying a non-kosher brisket. I asked him, tell me, how is it possible that you, out of all people, are buying a non-kosher brisket? And I badgered him enough. I was young enough to have a lot of chutzpah, not enough filters. And he says, you know what? I'll tell you the truth. When we came here, he came here from South America. His family escaped the Holocaust, and he came from South America. He says, when we came here, we lived in the Lower East Side, I think in New York. We're hanging out, and I was a little kid playing stickball. And my mother calls me out from the window. She says, hey, come upstairs for lunch. And I said to my mom, okay, I'm coming in a minute. And some of my friends says, you can't leave now. If you leave, we'll forfeit the game. What are you going to do? What are we going to do? He said, look, my mom needs me and I'm hungry. I didn't eat. So one of the guys says, he tells me, look, I have a sandwich. I have a bologna sandwich over here. I'll share it with you. She says, no, your bologna sandwich. My father told me never to eat your bologna sandwich because it's not kosher. He says, oh, kosher, come on. You actually believe your father? Don't you understand? He's from the old country, from the old generation. What does he know? This is America. Things are different here. He says, no, my father told me that if I eat not kosher, then things are going to go wrong. So let me tell you something. I've been eating not kosher for a while. Nothing goes wrong. So he's going back and forth. We're going back and forth. He said, look, if you leave now and we forfeit the game, you're never playing with us again. And he tells me, he's in his 80s. He tells me, look, I was a little kid. I said, okay. I stayed. And when he gave me a part of his sandwich, I was going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And eventually I felt, okay, so I took a bite. But when I took a bite, I was shaking, he said. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe I ate something not kosher. I was sure that God is going to come down from heaven and is going to strike me immediately. I was just waiting. Nothing. I was sure that my father is going to find out about this, or probably already knew about this. There's going to be major consequences. Father came home that day. Nothing. I was sure that I'm not going to wake up the next morning. Nothing. When I woke up the next morning, and then we went to Shul that Shabbos, and I was in the with the Birkat Kohanim. When I gave that blessing, I was thought to myself, maybe my father doesn't know what he's speaking about. Maybe my friend's right. Maybe all this is nonsense. Because look, I ate not kosher, nothing happened to me, I'm still in shul, I'm still religious, I'm still fine. The next week, he told his mom to begin with, he's not going to eat, he's not going to come back upstairs. He devoted himself fully to the game. And at this time, he didn't have such a dilemma in his mind to share his friend's sandwich. This is what he's telling me. And what at first was a very, very frightful experience became the norm. It says what it says, your habits become your behavior become your habits. What was yesterday you did by mistake, today becomes your norm. Jump all those years when I was speaking to him. He's an older man already. All of his children intermarried. All of them. I think he had like 4 boys. All of them married out. He came from Aharon HaKohen. All the way from Aharon. And it finished with him. His lineage finished with him. How does it start? I'm not afraid to do something if there's no consequence to it. My biggest fear is, what if I get punished? But there's something much worse than the punishment. It's disconnection. The disconnection itself is the worst thing that can happen. So here, the Rebbe explains that each one of us has an innate love for Hashem. That even if, God forbid, we've never kept anything, but the moment somebody will come and challenge the very essence of who we are, the very essence of our Judaism, it will come right to the forefront and says, no, we're not moving forward with it. Do whatever you got. You do whatever you need. Do whatever you want. I'm not moving past this. The Rebbe goes on to say, but seemingly this is not a sufficient explanation. Why? Because it's difficult to say that the entire novelty of this verse, Ki karov elecha adav ma'ov, for this matter is exceedingly close to you, is only regarding your heart. The whole entire novelty is just regarding your heart, your emotional self. Why? Because what the entire verse says, it is exceedingly close to you in your heart and your mouth to do it. It's understood that there's a novelty regarding speech and action as well. Your mouth and your heart to do it. Your mouth is speech, to do it is your action. And even more so. For this matter is exceedingly close to your mouth and your heart, and then to do it. It's understood from this that the novelty in itself is not just regarding your heart, but also regarding your mouth, speech, and your deed. So now we have to understand, what exactly does this verse mean? What does it mean that we are exceedingly close to Hashem, not just emotionally, but in our speech and in our actions as well? How much longer? Let's do one more chapter. This talk in itself is a fundamental talk. And the Rebbe over here is going to look at what exactly is Judaism premised on. Is Judaism premised on faith, or is it premised on understanding? And we're going to see that there are teachings that qualify one, and there are teachings that qualify the other, and the Rebbe is going to look at both of them and reconcile both of them. So let's understand. Now, the Rebbe says, right in the beginning of Tanya, the Alter Rebbe says that this book is based on this pasuk, for this matter is exceedingly close to you, in your mouth and your heart to do it, and to explain in a full well in b'derech haruka v'ktari, in a longer, shorter way. And we're going to explain how this is true in the longer, shorter way. The Alter Rebbe used an expression found in the Gemara, the longer, shorter way. Let's understand. The longer, shorter way, we could understand it two ways. First of all, there's those who interpret the Alter Rebbe's explanation, the longer, shorter way, that there are actually two ways, one longer and one shorter. What does that mean? The longer one, the love and fear that comes through contemplation. It's explained in chapters 16 and 17 in Tanya that a person who can contemplate and meditate and really process, and with proper focus and proper meditation, your mind gives birth to genuine love and genuine fear, which will draw you closer to Hashem and will prevent you from separating yourself from God. And this will be a genuine emotion that is born out of your toil. And the second way, so that's the longer way. And the shorter way, the Alter Rebbe explains that a person arouses within himself his natural love for God, as explained in chapter 18. Because so the first way to give birth to a genuine emotion, it is a longer way. And it takes much longer. It's much harder. It requires much more focus. And it takes time. And it takes exertion. And the second way is much shorter. To just arouse your innate love. What does it mean? Your innate love for Hashem, you're walking in a certain place and there's something you're not supposed to look at, you could immediately ask yourself one question. Is this going to enhance my relationship with Hashem? Or is it, God forbid, going to disconnect me? Think about this. We have a Yetzer Tov inside of us and a Yetzer Hara. We have a good inclination, the good drives, the holy drives, and then we have the natural and the more downward drives, the animalistic drives, even the evil drives, right? How do we work on our animalistic to stop us from doing something wrong? So think about this. You're sitting right now, and all of a sudden the Yetzer Hara comes and puts something in your head that shouldn't be there. Or put something in your focus that you shouldn't be doing. What do you tell the Yetzer Hara? You don't like it? You don't want it?
Get out.
He's going to say, no, of course you like it. Of course you want it. The Yetzer Hara knows you. In Yiddish, we call the klugiger, the sly one, the smart one. He knows all your buttons. He wouldn't come to you on Yom Kippur and says, listen, you're hungry, right? He says, yeah, I'm hungry. He says, all right, how about you eat your machzor, eat your siddur, eat your prayer book. You're hungry, eat it, eat your desk. And you have to struggle with something, I really, really want it. You know why he wouldn't ever come to you? Because you're hungry, you're not sick in the head. You're not sick, you're hungry. And he knows exactly what to press. He knows you so well that he will be able to press your personal buttons even when you don't even realize you have those buttons. So for you to say, no, I don't want it, of course you're going to say, of course you're going to say, you don't want it, don't lie to me. Don't be a hypocrite and don't be a liar. Of course you want it. I wouldn't tell you, the Yetzer Hara says, I wouldn't tell you to do this if you didn't want it. Oh, I don't like it. Who are you fooling? Who are you fooling? Be honest. Be honest with yourself. Of course you like it. If you didn't like it, I wouldn't tell you to do this. So what could you tell him? How do you work that moment and not letting him sit in your mind, in your speech, in your actions? Ask him one question. You have to be honest with yourself. Is this going to enhance or detract from my relationship with Hashem? That's the question you got to ask. All is nice. But if I eat this right now, is it going to enhance or is it going to detract? If I look over here, is it going to enhance or is it going to detract? If I do this right now, is it going to enhance or is it going to detract? Be honest. And if you know that, God forbid, it's going to detract, why would you want this? What, for a minute? That's what you wanted? You wanted, God forbid, separate yourself for something momentary? The pain that results afterwards sometimes is much harder than even what you're going through now. So then, this is called the derech tzara. Very simple. You're not responsible for the thoughts that come into your mind, but right now, in this moment, you could tell yourself, I'm not thinking about this. It's not. Go. The Alter Rebbe said, the Rebbe many times, remove your mind from this. Don't focus on this. Focus on what you do have. Go and do something, learn something, do a mitzvah, involve yourself in something good. You might not be able to come to hate the negativity, but you could certainly let the love take over this moment. And it's genuine. You're not being a hypocrite if you don't sin right now and you do a mitzvah. Because that's, I was once sitting with a couple and I asked them a question. They were in the middle of a few weeks of arguing. And I asked them, how many times do you guys go out a week? He said, as a couple? I said, yeah, as a couple. How many times do you go out a week? He says, Rabbi, you see how we are. Does it make sense for us to go out? We're constantly arguing. We're constantly bashing each other. So I asked him a question. We know all facts are true, but don't necessarily represent the truth. Factually, what's more fact and what's more true? What's more factual and what's more actual? That you're arguing or that you're a couple? What's the bottom line truth right now? What is the real truth of who you are right now? That you're arguing, that you're fighting, that you're not at ease with each other, or bottom line truth is that you're a couple. Now, if you were to do something as a couple right now, would that be hypocritical or would that be the truth? Which one is more hypocritical? Which one is more lie? You're arguing or are you going out together right now? Obviously, the truth is if you're a couple, then you belong together. Then you need to do couple things. The arguments, that's fact. Don't be blinded by facts. So when the Yetzer Hara comes and he starts pushing you, look over here, listen to this, do this, say that. Yeah, it might be tempting based on fact. But the bottom line truth, this is not me. It's not what I want. It's not going to enhance my relationship with Hashem. It's going to take away from it. If it's going to take away, why do I want it? Oh, because I have a Yetzer Hara. That's his problem, not mine. Go tell the Yetzer Hara, gay pfeifen. Go do whatever you want. Leave me alone. They're not going to leave you alone. But this is what's called derech haktsara, the shorter way. You could use them as an emergency. I'm not moving forward from this. I'm not doing this. Not that I'm 100% a tzaddik. I have my struggles. I know who I am. You know, the fifth Lubavitch Rebbe says a chassid needs to know his strengths and his weaknesses. Don't dilute yourself. Don't dilute yourself for your strengths, and don't dilute yourself for your weaknesses. So yeah, you're not holding there. You know, somebody came, just parenthetically, somebody came to the Mur as a Ken once and says, we saw your chassidim the way they're davening, and you know what? They're pretending. They're not really there. They pretend to shuckle back and forth and daven, and they pretend to be pious. We know some of them, they're not there yet. The Rebbe cited the Mishnah in Peah, the Gemara in Peah, says anyone who pretends to be a maimed, blind, deaf, sick, or whatever, in order to gain people's pity, in order to get tzedakah, that they should give him tzedakah. In other words, faking it, is guaranteed not to leave this world until they either become maimed or blind or deaf, etc. In other words, you pretended to be so, you faked it, you will make it. But the converse is also true for holiness. Even when you pretend to be holier than you are, better than you are, you're guaranteed to eventually make it there, not to leave this world. Dr. Viktor Frankl always says, like he brings this airplane, in order to hit a certain place because of the wind velocity, he has to reach above a certain area in order to actually hit his target. So you need to always try to push it higher than when you actually are in order to really reach your target. And if you hit higher, Baruch Hashem. But the Yetzer Hara will come to you and tell you, and you say, no, this is not the real me. This is not what I want. That's called the derech. This is called the innate love. It's not that I feel it 100%. I feel that I need to make a compromise in order to be able to do the right thing right now. If I really was 100% unified and one with my love, it wouldn't be a compromise. It would be the natural thing to do. I wouldn't think about this. What are you talking about? It's like I wouldn't look at eating a siddur. What are you doing? I'm not sick. It doesn't even register in my mind. This is an activity that I need to be engaging in. But when you do have that kind of Yetzer Hara, when we do have that kind of drive and that motivation, our innate love could kick in and prevent us from going forward. But the Alter Rebbe does not mean it. This is the way it could be interpreted, but that's not how the Alter Rebbe meant it. The Alter Rebbe explains, you could say that the Alter Rebbe's intention is not that there are two ways, longer and shorter, but rather a longer way which is at the same time the most shortest and the most concise way to get there. As we find in the Gemara, the story, that once Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya was walking towards, he hit a fork in the road, and he saw a child sitting by the fork, and he asked him, tell me, which is the shortest way to get to the city? And he says, the child pointed, this is a shorter, longer way, and this is a longer, shorter way. So Rabbi Yeshua took the shorter, longer way. And it was much shorter in distance, but when he came to the city, he was divided by a whole entire orchard, and he couldn't orchard, and he couldn't cross it. He had to go back and retrace his steps and go back. And when he finds the child, he says, "I thought you told me this is a shorter, longer way." He said, "I thought it's shorter. No, I thought you said it's a shorter way." I said, "I thought it's shorter and longer. Maybe shorter in distance, but it's longer in time for you to be able to actually get to where you need to." Versus this long way is a longer, shorter way. It might be much more arduous, much more effort, much more exertion, much more time consuming, but it's the most concise way to get to where you need to get to. So Alter Rebbe says, we're going to explain, and this is what all of Chabad Chassidus is based on, we're going to explain how loving Hashem, it's exceedingly close to you in your mouth and your heart to do it is exceedingly close. With Alter Rebbe said, we're going to explain it in a longer, shorter way. In order for us to be able to achieve the desired connection without any hindrances, or with little hindrances. So let's summarize, and we'll continue this tomorrow. Every one of us has an innate love for Hashem, and it is exceedingly close to us. to be able to arouse this love, which is in a state of slumber most of the time. But if nevertheless it is within us, and in order to arouse it, it is required exertion and an avoda and a great exertion, that this love will wake up, and not only wake up, but eventually penetrate every one of our facets. The love will saturate our thought, our speech, our action. Our entire being should be encompassed and saturated with the love to Hashem. That I shouldn't find myself making compromises. In the beginning of any relationship, in the beginning of a relationship, you find that you have to make compromises for each other. She wants to go out, I don't want to go out. Okay, we'll do it because this is what she wants. She wants to eat over here, I don't want to eat. Okay. Compromises. But after a while, as the relationship evolves and you go from being united, which means two, which came together under one premise, that's called united. But nevertheless, there's two separate beings. Eventually, you evolve into becoming one. When that relationship, you evolve to becoming one, you're no longer really making compromises. Everything you do is from that perspective. Everything you do is from what is good for us. How is it going to enhance us? How is it going to take away from us? In other words, the love in itself, the relationship itself, has saturated your entire being. So you go out as a husband, you come back as a husband, you go out as a wife, you come out and come back as a wife, etc., etc. In other words, your entire being is redefined by this. So the avodah, our service, is to take that innate love and wake it up and bring it into every one of our facets. And as long as this love did not penetrate our entire being, we are still considered to be distant, quote unquote, from genuine performance of Torah mitzvahs. Because it is possible that you'll constantly encounter more and more obstacles and more hindrances, just like we in the previous parable, which could be such a matter which seems to be short, but it's long in the long run. But if a person contemplates and processes correctly, then we'll be able to become one with our love for Hashem, and our entire being will be. Says, Hashem. We say in davening, my entire being should scream out Hashem. Will speak your praises. My entire being. In other words, every part of our life will be saturated with the love of Hashem. And what is the proper configuration? What does it says? In your mouth, in your heart to do it. In order to reach that configuration, there has to be first your mouth, then your heart, and then your action. Speech, emotion, and action, or speech is referring to v'dibarta bam, you should speak of them, Torah, learning, that's chokhmah, thought. Then your emotions, so mind, heart, deed.
So don't let your heart control your mouth.
So exactly. So it has to be that your mind controls your heart, and and then that produces sufficient emotions to create to drive you to do a deed, and that's the configuration. Now tomorrow we're going to look at the next part, which is it's an amazing. It's just one of my favorite talks. The Rebbe basically asked the question: what does that mean? What does it mean to really love God? What does it mean that you love God? How do you love God? How do you love something that is unknowable? That you have no real, Lord, Hashem says, my thoughts are not like your thoughts, my ways are not like your ways. How do you come to love God? To the extent that it will really, really become you. So the Rebbe is going to look at love as from a perspective of faith, Does loving God means that we just have to accept him for who he is? Or does love require us to really probe with our mind as much as possible? What exactly is Judaism based on, premised on? We'll look at things tomorrow. Good evening.